Hi, everybody, and welcome to this special episode of the Dr. Keith Darrow podcast, where we welcome Dr. Gyl Kasewurm. It's been like forever. I've been trying to get you on the show. I know our schedules haven't worked out. I am so excited to finally get to meet you, to get to work with you, to learn from you. Dr. Gyl, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Keith. Thank you. Our schedules are both pretty crazy. You know, even though I don't see patients as much as I used to, I'm super busy. It's just amazing, So, yeah, I was talking.
Look, Gyl, let's talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, let's dive in right there. You just hit one of the points that I know people want to understand about you. Tell me a little bit about the history of Dr. Gyl Kasewurm, graduating, eventually starting a practice, 10xing that practice, now coaching and consulting. Like, what a great journey. And I know I want to hear more, and I know everybody out there wants to learn more about who exactly and why exactly is Dr. Gyl.
Why is Dr. Gyl? Now, if my husband could figure out the answer to that question, it would be an easier married life. No kidding. So, I'm from a small town in Michigan, and I fell into audiology. I was going to be a music therapist. Really, all I wanted to do was sing. And that didn't work out. And then I got a job in the summer at the hearing impaired program here. And there was only one audiologist in the entire county, and he was working for the school. So I thought, well, this is interesting. So I like very much exact and precise things that are measurable. I like to be innovative, but I like to be able to measure objectives and outcomes. And so audiology did that for me. And so I got my undergrad degree, and then I actually worked for a couple of years because there were no audiology positions here, and I was waiting to see if it was really going to pan out for me. And then after 2 years, I went back, drove back and forth to Western Michigan University, got my master's, and the day after I graduated, I started a business.
Wow.
Crazy, which I'm kind of crazy, but so OSHA
all innovators are a little crazy.
That's right.
And I honestly think crazy is a side effect of awesome. So it's okay.
Well, thank you. I like that. Crazy is a side effect of awesome. So I decided OSHA was going to finalize their ruling for industrial hearing testing. So I thought, okay, this is an opportunity for me. Back then, you had to work for 9 months under somebody to get your C's. And so I could still work in the schools part-time and then start a business. So I went to the bank and borrowed money to buy like a box on wheels, a microprocessor audiometer, a sound level meter, whatever. And the bank wouldn't give me the money. They would only give my husband the money. And then I had to go out and get clients, customers. And I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have a truck to pull the trailer. I had never backed up a trailer. In fact, I could barely drive without backing into things. So people were, needless to say, skeptical.
Yep.
So I got the catalogs of everybody I knew that would need the services. So printing companies, die cast companies, stamping plants, and just started calling them up and saying, I have a service that you need. And I would sit surrounded by these books until I made 50 cold calls in a day. And I had 2 days a week that I had to do that with. I knew what I had to make every month to pay my payment. And I just did it. I mean, there was no looking back. There were no safety nets. You just had to do what you had to do. But I knew I could do it, even though I was a little crazy and naive. And so that's how I started. And then the ENTs in town asked me to start a clinic for them. So my husband quit his job and started running the industrial business. And then we just grew from there. But I always knew this. I wanted to own a business. I knew I'd be good at it because I knew I would do whatever it took to make it thrive. When you don't have a safety net, you have to do what it takes. And so I was innovative. I was good at being involved in the community and getting people involved in the business that would help promote it. And that's kind of how we started and how we grew.
I mean, that great story. I've met a lot of private practice owners, a lot of audiologists, and I think a lot of us people who started a private practice have a similar story. They're all different, but they all have that. I wanted to do something else. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to innovate. I wanted to bring something back to my community. So I appreciate that. However, as you know, most of those private practice owners go on to run an average hearing clinic. And you and I both know what average means, meaning that we're treating 35 to maybe 50% of the people that walk in our door, that each audiologist, each provider has a revenue of $500 to $700,000 a year. And from what I've gathered, what I've read about you is you've figured out how to run a not so average clinic, dare I say, much higher than normal, a remarkable clinic. So what was that process like for you?
Well, first of all, when you have goals, the business goes further, right? So I always had goals. I always knew what I wanted out of life. I knew I'd be successful because I don't take no for an answer. And I just do whatever it takes, So most people, you're right, live in the middle of mediocrity. And it only takes doing one or maybe two things better to really excel, right? So recently I was with an audiologist and her daughter was with her. And she said, hey, will you sit down and talk with my daughter, and she's interested in audiology. And I said, yes. And so I started talking about business, and I realized how excited I got about it, because I believe in it. I believe that it only takes a little bit more to really excel and to run a business that's thriving, which is so much more rewarding than just getting by. And so when I did that, I thought, what has made me so passionate about this? Because I know the life that I have as being an audiologist. I know it's different than many. I know I can walk into retirement and live a life that's big, right? Like the life I've always lived. And that's not important to some, but I want to feel rewarded for what I do. And that includes financially. I know I do a great job for patients. I know I go way over the top for them, right? I know for colleagues who need business advice. This weekend, I spent like 4 hours on the phone with colleagues helping them. But sometimes you have to want to help yourself. So you have to track your numbers, and then you have to set goals of where you think those numbers can be and what you can do to make that happen. So it's not rocket science. It's just business. And I love it. And so as the business grew, one thing that I did, Keith, that was so important, I set up an advisory board for the business. I collected and gathered some of the smartest people I knew that were my patients and said, will you come to lunch with me? Tell me what I could do differently. Tell me what your friends say about us. Tell me what you think of our marketing. And, I had a former president of a large corporation here who became a mentor of mine. And I was going to relocate the business and buy the property. And he said, Gyl, where you're going is a mistake. It's a mistake. And so I asked a few other people. Well, he knew because of his position in the community what was going to be the next hot spot here. And so he said, this is where you need to go. You'll get tax incentives. I said, okay, we did it. We were the first people to move in this location. And the business, after 20 years in business, I grew 52% in 3 years because of the advice I got from this business person. So
you would definitely, so I appreciate that, because as a like you, as a coach, as a consultant, I believe in my coach, right? We can't do it alone. And I love what you just said there, which is find the right people to give you advice. Perhaps you've already read the book, but The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz speaks exactly to this, about being in touch with your customers or our patients, understanding their needs, understanding the needs of the community, and giving them what they want, and not worrying about trying to discount prices, not trying to race to the bottom. Give them what they want, make it a value they can't refuse, and you can really then charge exactly what's appropriate for your services.
So, that's interesting that you say that, because so I got this great advice, right? And he knew. Now where I am, it's surrounded by a professional golf course that has the senior PGA. There's a big development here. There's a resort here. All because he knew what I didn't. I don't have to know it all. I just have to know where I can find that information or to get help. And it's so satisfying when something like that, I love my business. I love helping people here, but more than that, I love giving more than what's expected to patients. And so I built everything around that. How can I exceed their expectations? And you are so right. The fact is that baby boomers have more disposable income now than ever before in the history of this country. And they will spend money if you tell them why they really need to and deliver more than they expect and assure them that you are there for all of their hearing needs and coming up with new things, staying in communication. And people give back. They like to give back too.
Yeah.
And so they will always want to do more for you if you do more for them. And that makes a business thrive. So when I started way, way back, I was the only audiologist in the whole county. That gave me a huge advantage. So now people will say to me, well, your patients are different than mine. I'm like, really? I'm right next door to the county with, the highest percentage of Medicaid patients, and we don't take Medicaid. Okay. But it's like people do want the best and they want to hear. And now that I live with the person with hearing loss, I know how important that is. And I won't settle. I won't settle and I won't let them settle.
Exactly. And I think that is such a key lesson. Do not settle. I've often been on stage and I've said things like, would you treat your own mother with something lower than premium technology? Would you skip real ear verification on your mother? If you had an opportunity to do a cognitive screening, would you do it? Would you do this? Would you do that? And every time it's of course, yes. Yet you compromise your patient's treatment every day by not giving them the best, by allowing them to use, I'm with you, right? Not accepting Medicaid, not accepting some of these programs where you ultimately have to compromise patients. Right?
You do. And you have to compromise time, so I was the only provider way back when I started this business. Now there are 7 competitors within 7 miles in a town of 12,000 people. And I got the biggest target on my back. They're all coming after me. I'm like, bring it on, baby, because you know what? I'm going to do what's true to me. I'm going to do the best. I'm going to recommend the best. And I'm going to be the best. And that's why people come here. They don't come for mediocrity.
Now, all right. But now I have to ask you though. Give me something. Give me some details. I know you're not going to give me all the ingredients, but I want some of the ingredients in the special sauce of how Dr. Gyl not only grew her small private practice to, and this is your quote, I've seen it before, to 10 times the revenue of a typical practice, and then how do you do that for the clients that you work with?
It's really simple. I've been in a lot of practices. And most people, it's the same thing. They don't charge enough. They don't know exactly what they're paying. So the first thing is know your numbers and track your help rate. Okay. Somebody, think about it. A professional athlete has to have a certain standard, right? So if a professional basketball player only made 40% of their free throws, they'd be in danger if they didn't try to improve their skills. So that's the number one thing, Keith. Track your help rate, because we always think we're better than we are. How tragic is it that somebody waits 8 years? They go without understanding people. They get deprived. They're isolated. They finally walk in your door. And when they say, that's too much money, we say, okay, my hearing isn't bad enough. There are ways to show them it is. Okay. I say, hell no.
Hell no.
This is what you need to do. And somebody said to me once, boy, you're quite a salesperson. I said, you know what? I can't help you if I don't sell you something. And I want to help you because I know we're going to be the best. And so that's just at my heart. I don't have to BS about it. It's what I believe.
Sure. And so therefore you're not actually selling. You're passionate, you're purposeful, you're intentional with the way you relate to your patients and how you express to them their need for treatment. And then they say, yes, I don't believe you sell anything. I just think you offer people something that has a tremendous value and it's a no-brainer for them to invest in.
You're helping. And so when I go into practices, I know it freaks them out. Here she comes. Because they know I'm going to tell them what's real. I'm going to say, listen, you got to raise your prices or you're going to go broke. And it's no fun to go broke. I've been there. And so it's simple though. It's charging enough, knowing that your marketing is effective, not that you're just flushing money down a toilet, and just then delivering the service that people want and expect and are paying for.
You used the sports analogy. And so, you don't have to be a sports fanatic to know who Tom Brady is, right? Greatest of all time. Even if you don't watch sports, you've heard the name, you know of him. Every single time he steps in the middle of a game, when he steps off the field, he doesn't go sit and have a drink and have a smoke and just hang out with his buddies for 5 minutes until he goes back on the field. He sits down, he sits with his coach, he watches the last 4 plays, what he did wrong, what he did right, how he can do it better, right? That is the way we have to be. We have to be proactive about our patient's health. It is an abomination. Like, I'll use that word when a patient comes in after waiting 8 years and you tell them it's okay to wait another year. It's not okay. I believe that provider should be held accountable for that, because we're not holding the welfare of each patient paramount when we sit by and let more than 80% of people with hearing loss do nothing about it. It's our fault.
And in most practices, okay, a business owner, and I did this for many years, will take on everything, right? So now you hire somebody, you don't give them a real definite job description. You don't tell them what you expect out of them. You track their numbers, they don't track their own. And then we get burned out when we're doing their work and our work too. So you have to hold people accountable to a standard and not compromise it, So when you ask about my thing with females, okay, I'm the youngest of 4, 3 significantly older brothers, and I couldn't take a back seat. I had to push to get my own spot in that family, which I still do. But I had a woman say to me recently, our profession's more than 80% female and still driven by men in many cases. And I was talking with a woman. I said, why don't you look at your numbers? It's important to any business, and it won't take that long. And now, there's so many softwares that give you all the numbers. All you got to do is review them once a month, right? And she said to me, well, to be honest, my husband makes a lot of money and I didn't really need to. And I said, nothing will make me go off and come through this phone like that statement. It doesn't matter if you're female or you're male.
No. It really doesn't. It really, please don't do this for what I just heard you say. And I've heard some of my clients have said it. Basically, what I just heard you say is this is a hobby. And that's exactly not, right. Please don't do this as a hobby.
My business is a business. And if I ever want to sell this business, and I will, it has to be profitable or it's not worth anything. And guess what? When you go to walk towards retirement, that's going to take a lot of money and you work hard your whole life. You should have money put away so you can live a life that you deserve to live. And that will only come by running a profitable business. So I'm passionate about that.
Now, I want to touch one of the things that you said that look, I've never literally worn your shoes, so I can't speak to it, but help me understand, right? So you have the Dr. Gyl's Women of Wonder, which is amazing. And I heard what you said, 80%, I think it's actually 83% or 82% of the field is female. But at the same time, I always feel like I'm getting a bad rap for genes that I certainly couldn't control. I'm on the same page as you, yet, right? Women of Wonder, I'm sort of on the outside like, hey, I want to be part. So why am I being left out?
So I got a lot of grief for that. But I really felt, especially during the pandemic, that's really when that thing mushroomed, is that I think women had a lot of increasing demands on them, perhaps from having to educate their children and homeschool and keep them home, and had to make it all work. And so many people have reached out to me and said, I am just struggling. And I'll tell you what, men and women, whatever, equal business people can be whatever. But I think women have some interesting demands on them. And when I was on the AAA board, I found out that a lot of women get into audiology because they want to help people. Well, that's really not the best way to run a business because I want to help people. I still got to make a profit too, and a good one, and one I deserve to make. So I think that the women needed a little extra support and encouragement to say, hey, you can make it through this. Reach out to others that have similar circumstances, and perhaps they can help you figure out, so some people start bringing their kids to school, to work, and then having like a school in their offices. I just think that there were, and let's face it, okay, I'm sorry. I love my husband. I've been married to him for almost 45 years. Yes, I was 3. And we don't think the same. And we don't think the same. I walk in a room and I see everywhere, and he sees, oh, I happen to leave the remote control there. I'm like, no, look around you. We don't think the same. And sometimes we need topics that appeal to us. And let's face it, How many times do you go to a big meeting, and despite the fact that this profession is over 80% female, most of the people on the stage are men?
Agree wholeheartedly agree. And how about that, the recent meeting at Audiology where they had the 5 presidents? You mean the 5 white guys?
We're not a very diverse group. I mean, I have to tell you,
We are a pretty diverse group, but we're not acknowledging it. So I'm with you. It was more tongue in cheek asking you about the Women of Wonder. I'm completely for it. I think there needs to be more empowerment. I think there needs to be more of a voice from women, from private practice owners. I think the fact that some of our leading organizations, their presidents and vice presidents and board members all work for the Big Five is a complete and utter disgrace to our field. It just, could you imagine the American Medical Association being running by the president of Pfizer? Or it doesn't make sense. And why do we allow these?
I agree totally. Yeah. And, it's in my meetings, I try to have speakers that has nothing to do with audiology. Like I have a woman coming who called me, who's a life coach, and she's going to talk about, managing emotional energy. I mean, there are days, even now, after all these years, when I am an emotional wreck.
Sure.
And I have to call a friend and say, I don't know what the hell I'm doing anymore. It's not working out. We all have those times. And I just think some of those emotions are better handled female to female or male to male, but I think we all get along. I just wanted something that was, catered to women.
I really do. I think it's great. I think that I saw all the pictures. I spoke to a lot of people who went to the 2022 event and it was wildly popular. And I think people came home very invigorated from it. I think it was perfect timing as people were really starting to come out of their shell from the pandemic. And I completely promote people going to the one in 2023. Now what are the dates on that and how do people learn about it?
January 11th to 13th in Naples, in a beautiful hotel that's right on the water. You can walk to Fifth Avenue. The party's at my place. And it's going to be great because I live in Naples 6 months out of the year. So it's so much easier to have an event where you're part of the community because then you know what's really, Dollywood was great and we had a great time and it was inspiring. But yeah, I've gotten some great speakers that have never been heard from before in audiology. So I'm excited about that. That's excellent. Just like you're trying to innovate, you're trying to inspire, you're trying to enlighten people. We get stuck. We get stuck too much. And when you're stuck, the only thing you can do is start planning for the future. Because I just read a quote that said, if you really want the best future, create it. And so that's what I'm still trying to do. I'm getting into a new stage of life and I still want to work and I'm going to find I'm looking at some new opportunities. And so, yeah, I'm excited about the future. And I'll tell you something, Keith, it has gotten better. From when I started my business years ago, it has gotten better. And let me tell you something, when I was going in that industries, and this was 35 years ago already, when I was going to these industries, the safety directors were all men. And that got a little intimidating sometimes, but you know what? I just forged ahead and I let them know too that I was smart, that I was hardworking and that I knew what I was doing. And so I got respect from them.
So you and yes, you've worked your butt off to get your respect. I also know that you understand some of the basic principles of building your own trust and authority. That's one of the things that we focus on mostly in our group at Odd Experts is helping people to harness their power to become the trusted authority in their community. And one of the tools for that is to publish, to get out word, to help get your word out there, let the community know what you stand for. So I want to know a little bit about the backstory of your book that is available on Amazon, The Dr. Gyl Guide to a Successful Hearing Care Practice. Tell me more about that, why you did it, and what that's meant for you.
Well, so years ago, I was at a convention, I was at the AAA convention and I ran into David Kirkwood and I said, why is it that while this profession is the majority female, why is it that not one column in your magazine is written by a woman? And he said, do you want to do it? I said, absolutely. I started in journalism. I can do that. And so that's how I started it. I always use just like personal accounts of things that happened to me. I don't have any trouble telling people that I've made lots of mistakes and how I've corrected them, and just kind of a simple template of saying to people, okay, use this. That's the thing. Most practices are one professional, one support person. They're working in the business. They don't have time to work on the business. So giving them some tools like, okay, here's a guide for interviewing. Here's this guide. Here's that guide. And, that's why many people join networks, which are all fine and well, but you have to know that networks, you are paying them for the services, whether it's in the price of hearing aids or not. That's fine and well. But at some point, you probably have gained the information and knowledge that you need from that group and can go out on your own,
What do you see as one of the biggest weaknesses of a private practice owner? As we start to wrap this up, I want anybody who's listening. And by the way, I just received notice that this podcast, which only started a few months ago, has already received its 1,000th download. So I know people in our industry are going to hear this. It's excellent. What's that message? What do you see as a weakness, and how do people overcome it?
Number one, people don't charge enough. They're afraid to charge. And so they discount what they do, and then they're not making as much. They don't control their costs. They don't try to negotiate pricing. And so they're paying too much and charging too little. Number one weakness in every practice I see.
And that I think you would agree is really a self-limiting belief, because it's this sense of, I can't charge this much. I'll never forget the first audiologist I hired at my private practice. I was talking to her and she said, "Hey, Keith, look, if I had hearing loss, I don't think I'd be able to afford it." And it literally hit me like a ton of bricks of, because my audiologist comes from a position of scarcity, she's going to convey to her patients scarcity. It's not worth it. If I had hearing loss, I couldn't afford it, which is just, that's not the right mindset. It has to be about abundance, not only in what you charge, but then what you provide. Look, if you're going to skimp on services, then skimp on price. But if you're going to go all in, and if you're going to be there for your patient every step of the way and include everything that's needed, you're right. You have to unequivocally increase your prices. I'm with you.
But I think it's one of the reasons that we have all these third parties is we've always said hearing aids cost this much, and you can't do that. You've got to say, like I think about an orthodontist. He doesn't say you're paying this much for the wires. No, you're paying for that and the professional services and getting straight teeth. And so we always say this is your hearing enhancement plan, which includes this and this and this. You are not paying for hearing aids. You get me. And I think, we've tried unbundling and doing all these things. And I think sometimes those kind of things are really a crutch because people feel guilty for charging, to be totally honest. And
I'm completely, look, I won't say names, but a colleague of mine who is unbundled, and I put that in air quotes, who is unbundled, I asked her point blank, okay, well, that's great. Your unbundled price, what does that cost? And what does it include? Well, she said it includes the first 3 visits, and it includes the technology, and it's unbundled, and that's $6,500. I was like, what do you mean how is that unbundled? I know what the manufacturer charges you. That's not unbundled. I'm going to charge you a premium for the technology, and now I'm going to charge you for every step of the way, which is fine. I'm not saying I have a problem with that model. What I'm saying is, let's be real. Unbundled was meant to be like 10 to 15% over cost of goods and then charge for everything.
Exactly.
So people now have just warped it into whatever they want it to be.
But the other thing is, I was sitting with a woman recently and I'm saying, I said, okay, I'm going to come and do an event for you just to help you, get things going again. And I'll just do it out of nicety. And so I'm like, I need the price sheet so I know what's tough. And she's like messing around. I'm like, okay, here's the thing. Prices are not created by emotion. They are created by cost, and they are created by how much you need to run this business, right? So to me, business is numbers. I love numbers, Keith. I love them, okay? And it's a good thing I couldn't, marry them, because who knows? But it's like, I just love them. It's not an emotional decision. My cost of goods needs to be 30, 35% or less. That's how I set my pricing. There's nothing else about it, right? And so that's what I think that people get all emotional about it. It's not emotion, it's just numbers.
Look, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we finally got to meet up. I know you and I are going to continue to cross paths, because what I've learned today is while all of us, while you and I may do some things differently, ultimately we share that passion to help more private practice owners really just take grab of their own power to be able to set the prices as they want them, to be able to run an autonomous practice and just run the practice of their dreams. I love what you said earlier. I think it was even before we started recording, which is I could sell my practice and go off into the sunset, but when you love what you do, and I don't mean to sound cliche, but it's really like you never work a day in your life. And I too love helping private practice owners.
And it's like so true, Pete. And I'll tell you something, having been someone who's made money and someone who hasn't made money, it's so much more satisfying when at the end of the month or the beginning of the month, you get this nice fat paycheck that you deserve, right?
Exactly.
You're not gouging people. We're not counting everything we put into this experience. And it is an experience to have better hearing. And we're committed to it, and people will pay for that. And we shouldn't apologize ever, because we have a great degree and we have a lot of knowledge. And if you deliver it properly, your business will always excel. Always.
Always. Look, thank you so much for your time. Look, I have to ask you the one personal question I ask everybody one at the end. And for you, this one's special because I've been following you, and I think you've got a bit of an obsession with shoes.
I do. In fact, I took them off, but I had some somebody said to me, well, it's too bad they can't see your shoes today. Yes.
So I got to ask, what's your favorite pair of shoes? And then I'm going to ask, I hope you're willing to divulge, what's the most you've spent on a pair of shoes?
My favorite brand is Jimmy Choo.
Okay.
And I only had this experience once. I was at a Starkey Expo, and we got there and I was all excited, and I went across the street, and David and my husband and I were having some Mexican food, and there were some students there. So we had a couple drinks, and I bought all those students lunch. Well, then they thought they had to come back to us and have a couple more drinks. I went to Jimmy Choo and spent $1,700 on a pair of crystal shoes. They were absolutely fabulous. And then I said to my husband the next morning, you got to take these back because I can't really afford these shoes. And he tried, and they wouldn't take him back. So I came and, beefed up something at work. And yeah, but typically I like Ferragamos. I like Jimmy Choo. So, I probably would pay twice what somebody would pay, maybe three times.
Fair enough. That is a great story.
It's better to have less and good quality, just like in business, than it is to have more.
A great lesson to be learned from that. Thank you so much, Dr. Gyl. I greatly and genuinely appreciate you being here, and I look forward to working more with you in the future.
I look forward to working with you too, Keith. Thanks for asking me, and have a great day.